coming up.
So when you made $11 billion in net income last year and you just spent $2 billion buying another credit cybersecurity company, why is it that in 2020, former industry minister, Liberal industry minister Navdeep Bains had to give you $50 million to help on cybersecurity when you have that kind of profit margin?
Over the life of a mortgage, the difference that somebody would pay in interest from a 25-year mortgage to a 30-year mortgage is roughly about $122,000. Does that sound ballpark about right?
Perhaps.
Great. So would you say then like a 30-year mortgage doesn't actually make life more affordable for Canadians? It just makes your banks a little richer?
And nobody else was offering you money anywhere else. So you were coming here anyway, you said. So the $50 million that you took, like the $18 million that Loblaws took for fridges, seemed to just be free money for you, where you were coming here anyway and it made no difference.
Priceless.
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
I have the very great pleasure today of welcoming among us Darren Hanna, who is the Senior Vice President in Financial Stability and Banking Policy, as well as Mr. Charles Doherty, Assistant General Counsel and Vice President, Legal and Risk.
Your last name. Correct me if I got it wrong, but thanks for joining us. From Mastercard Canada, we have Balinder Aluwalia, Senior Vice President, Market Development, and accompanied with Martin Lehman, Vice President, Strategy, Pricing, and Interchange. Thanks for being here. From the Retail Council of Canada, we have Carl Lidler, Senior Vice President. And from Visa Canada, we have Jay Dory, Head of Corporate Affairs. Thanks to all for joining us. Thank you very much. And now to start the discussion, I'll turn it over to MP Perkins for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, witnesses, for this appearing at the start of this important study. My first questions are for the Canadian Bankers Association. Can you tell me by member institution of the CBA what the return on equity of the credit card business is for each bank?
No, I can't specifically for each bank, and certainly not by business line that way.
Can you, if you have access to that, can you pledge to table that with the committee?
I don't have access to it by business line.
Okay. I'm just talking about the Visa business, not by...
I understand that.
The credit card business. Okay. Does the CBA have access by each of your members to what the loan loss percentages are for each, for the credit card businesses?
Not by institution. We don't gather the data. We don't gather data like that by institution.
Would you pledge
I can
to go
tell you
and
in
get those from
aggregate.
Can you pledge to go get those from your members?
No, I can tell you in aggregate, though, that the arrears rate for the credit card business writ large is about 1.6% currently.
1.6%, pretty modest. So the next series of questions I have are for Mastercard. Appreciate your presentation. Can you let me know, please, or let the committee know, what your revenue was last year, globally? Well, publicly reported Mastercard's revenue was $25 billion US, globally.
Sure.
How about the operating income?
I don't have that with me at the
moment. It was $14 billion US last year. How about the net income?
Probably around $11 billion.
Not around, 11.1 billion. So you do know the numbers. Cybersecurity is very, very critical for everybody at this table, right?
Of course.
Can you tell me how important it is for Mastercard? Because I see you recently bought another cybersecurity company for $2.1 billion called Recorded Future. What can you tell me about cybersecurity and the importance and how much you spend on that a year?
I don't have the exact numbers. I can tell you strategically, it's one of the important pillars that we're focused on. We've talked a lot about the role of that Mastercard plays as the network, and safety and security, and cybersecurity particularly, especially in light of October being Cybersecurity Month, is particularly important for our business going forward.
So when you made $11 billion in net income last year and you just spent $2 billion buying another credit cybersecurity company, why is it that in 2020, former industry minister, Liberal industry minister Navdeep Bains had to give you $50 million to help on cybersecurity when you have that kind of profit margin and you have the ability to go out and buy another cybersecurity company for $2.1 billion?
Ms. Perkins, this is a question specifically about the Cybersecurity Center in Vancouver.
Why is it that you needed $50 million from the federal government, Mastercard, to pledge towards improving cybersecurity when you're already putting billions of dollars towards it?
We're very proud of our Cybersecurity Center in Vancouver. It's a center of excellence for us, one of the first in the world. We invested $500 million in that investment. It is exceptional because it generates Canadian IP, which is kept here in Canada and will be commercialized as Canadian IP. We see the value in driving cybersecurity from Canada, and it's something that we remain very proud of.
Does Jennifer Sloan still work for you?
She does.
She does. So Jennifer Sloan, who used to be a chief of staff in the Liberal government of Jean Chrétien, and her job, I believe, is government relations.
Correct.
Was instrumental in getting $50 million, obviously, because she had a pile of meetings with the industry department lobbying it before that announcement was made to get you $50 million. Why is it that a company with $25 billion of revenue and $11 billion of profit needs $50 million from the taxpayer to do cybersecurity to protect consumers?
I understand the question. Ultimately, I think it's very important for us to recall that we've spent $500 million in that, specifically the Cybersecurity Center in Vancouver. We're very proud. We've generated over 90 patents, Canadian patents done by Canadian researchers, and will be commercialized from Canada within the Mastercard network.
Here's you don't need the $50 million, so will Mastercard return it to the taxpayer?
Mr. Perkins, again, we've done a great job. We're very proud of everything that we've committed to in Vancouver. It's generating significant patents and technology and infrastructure and everything that's important to Mastercard as a cybersecurity center of excellence. And we're committed to that for the future.
This is the Liberal government has a history of handing out money to corporations who don't need it. Loblaw's got $18 million for fridges. I think Loblaw's can afford fridges. And you got $50 million for cybersecurity when you're spending huge amounts, billions, thankfully you are, of money. I just don't understand why you need taxpayer money to do what is your job, which is to have a secure credit card system for Canadians. Why is it you need taxpayer money when you've got billions to do it on your own? Isn't that your job?
Mr. Perkins, we're very proud of everything that's coming out of the Cybersecurity Center of Excellence in Vancouver. Again, 90 patents is not an insignificant amount. We've got a big team. We've got a big office there. We're generating new use cases every day, every week, and we're proud to stand behind everything that's being delivered from the Cybersecurity Center.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Perkins.
I'll start with Mastercard. So just to clarify, in 2020, an announcement they made at a Davos conference, you accepted $50 million from the federal Liberal government. Is that correct? $49 million. So in 2023, Mastercard's global revenue was about $25 billion. Did you ever consider that it might be, putting it mildly, reputationally problematic for a company like yours that many Canadians intimately understand the cost of using to take $50 million of Canadian tax dollars for something that you should probably be doing anyways on your own?
Thank you for the question. I think we've invested $500 million in the Cybersecurity Center of Excellence.
But cybersecurity is important and integral to your business, right?
Correct.
So why did you take 50 million tax dollars for something that you should be doing anyways from the federal Liberal government?
I think from where outcomes focused, I think there's a focus on driving new patents, taking Canadians, employing them, giving them those high-paying, high-wage, high-technology jobs, and an opportunity.
So the fees you charge, the fees that you charge to business is a big issue, and some folks here have talked about because those fees potentially get passed on to consumers at a higher cost, with things being higher priced. At the time that you took 50 million Canadian tax dollars from the Liberal government, was your company's lobbying posture against changes or a cap on the amount of fees that you could charge to businesses?
I'm afraid I don't understand the question.
So were you lobbying at the time to not change the status quo on what you could charge to businesses?
That's not my area, unfortunately. I don't know.
You don't know. Okay. Do you think it was possible that the $50 million you took from the federal government and the $500 million for something you should ostensibly be doing anyways was to keep the status quo or keep the federal Liberal government from changing the status quo on what you could charge to businesses for the use of your services?
Our focus is investment and growth, and Cybersecurity Center of Excellence in Vancouver allows us to continue to invest in the infrastructure.
Like, don't you think it's a little sus or weird to ask for $50 million of Canadian tax dollars for something you should be doing anyways?
Look, we invested $500 million. It's something that we're very proud of.
Out of $21 billion. Thank you. I'm going to then, I'm going to go over to Mr. Hanna for perhaps a little different line of questions. People with high debt to income ratios, like put a different way, people who pay a significant amount for their mortgage right now, they may use their credit cards more frequently for things like groceries or gas. Would that be a fair characterization?
Possibly.
Possibly. Okay. I know that there's a lot of people in my community who do. I hear about it in my office. So the change between a 25-year amortization or a 30-year amortization for a mortgage, right? It might sound good because it might lower your monthly interest payments, but I did a little research, and on the benchmark price of a home in March of 2024 and the total mortgage, the interest paid in over the life of a mortgage, the difference that somebody would pay in interest from a 25-year mortgage to a 30-year mortgage is roughly about $122,000. Does that sound ballpark about right?
Perhaps.
Great. So would you say then, like, a 30-year mortgage doesn't actually make life more affordable for Canadians? It just makes your banks a little richer?
What I'd say is that it gives an additional option. And what, in that case, what has to happen is, and what's important then, is your banker and the customer need to meet, talk about the options, and look to determine what works best for the customer. Ultimately, this is a relationship business. The customer you're talking about has at least 2 products with the bank and probably more. They want to make sure that that customer is well served. They want to make sure that that customer is being provided with good value. And they want to make sure that that customer is able to continue to pay.
And look, I know that there's risk in providing Canadians with mortgage, but would you say that like increasing that 30-year mortgage right now, it does make the product a little riskier for you and certainly for the consumer as well too, right?
What I'd say is that it's another option. The arrears rates on mortgages are very low, 0.2%.
But they're increasing,
strong market,
though, right?
They're increasing from a pandemic low that was a historic low. They're reverting back to the norm, but they're still incredibly low.
So would you characterize like mortgages as affordable in Canada right now?
I would characterize them as being a competitive market, as a market, frankly, let me separate out mortgages and housing. Housing can be quite expensive. Absolutely. I live in the GTA. I know what expensive housing looks like. Mortgages, very competitive market. Its rates did go up as interest rates went up. They are coming down, which is absolutely true. There are options out there, and we want customers to shop around, particularly in that market.
Would you say then that perhaps the best way to make housing more affordable for Canadians is not to increase the length of the mortgage, but to increase supply so that prices go down?
We have been firm in saying that this is a supply-driven issue. That is absolutely true.
Thank you.
I did spend a few years working at a head office of a bank on Bay Street, as well as on an executive team of 2 retailers. So I do know what the internal rate of return on equity of the bank I worked for in credit cards, and it was 52%. You've focused a lot, the Canadian Bank Association, on the cost, but they're making a massive amount of profit. When the bank's target ROE was 15%, it was making 52% on credit cards. And I like Mr. Van Byn, and clearly it's business development to move them to other products because they don't cut the credit card off when they make that shift to a line of credit. So my question, though, I'd like to ask about the interchange. The interchange revenue, Visa, I guess, is the best people, or Mastercard, whichever one wants to take it. The interchange revenue is based on a percentage of the sale, yet the cost does not change based on the sale, does it?
In fact, so the benefits that are afforded to consumers, both in terms of insurance, fraud protection, loss underwriting, as well as the provision of credit, that all fluctuates with the size of the sale and the amount of the underlying transaction.
Yeah, but the difference between what the credit cards company get on 2% of $100 or 2% of $10,000 is very different, and your costs don't go up that much.
With respect to Visa, the costs do fluctuate a little bit. With respect to the card issuers, the banks that are issuing those amounts, I would say they do. You know, the cost to refund a transaction that has been counterfeit or fraudulent for a $100 transaction is $100. That same transaction,
the loss is 1.6%. Generally, bank losses overall across a bank are less than 100 basis points, sometimes less than 50. 1.6% is not huge. In fact, the Business Development Bank of Canada's loan losses are over 2%, and they still make $500 million profit a year. So this is a very, very profitable business, and the expenses don't go up exponentially. For Visa specifically, I just want to summarize. If I understand correctly what you said to my colleague, Mr. Patzer, you were putting the cybersecurity business here because of reasons other than $50 million, because of the talent pool, because of technology, because of the universities.
Certainly part of the thought process.
And nobody else was offering you money anywhere else. So you were coming here anyway, you said. So the $50 million that you took, like the $18 million that Loblaws took for fridges, seemed to just be free money for you, where you were coming here anyway and it made no difference.
We're very proud of everything that we've
I know you're proud of it, and you must be proud of taking the $50 million of taxpayer money when people are in record numbers lining up at food banks. But with that said, Mr. Chair, I'd like to seek unanimous consent on this issue of Visa, and I'll move it as a formal motion for a vote if necessary, but I hope we can get unanimous consent. I believe this may have been sent to the clerk. Maybe it could be circulated. The following motion, that the committee order the production of all documents, emails, memos, and any materials related to the Liberal government's $50 million handout to Mastercard, including the communications between ISED, PCO, and the PMO with Mastercard regarding the grant. And the committee report to the House and express its concern regarding the value for money for taxpayers on the nearly $50 million taxpayer money given to Mastercard by the Trudeau Liberal government. I believe that's been sent to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. You're very hopeful to think we can get unanimous consent 5 minutes before we adjourn the meeting at this committee on such a motion, but I appreciate your optimism.
Just a straightforward document production motion. I'm sure everybody
has it been sent in both official languages? So the clerk will circulate it to members for them to take a look at it. I think it would be fair to give members some time to consider it duly. I'm looking at the other members. Is it? It can be debated now, or otherwise, what I would suggest, Mr. Perkins, is that we come back to it at our next meeting. Yes. So what I suggest, Mr. Perkins, you moved it on the floor, and it's okay because it's on the topic. However, I would suggest that we bring it up at the start of the next meeting so that members have the time to review it, and we can then debate it if you so decide. Is that okay with all members? Yes, and your time. So we'll get back to it. But technically, considering there is a motion on the floor, we probably should just adjourn the meeting at this point. We're at the end of our time. However, I know Mr. McKay had one question, so if members permit, I'd allow Mr. McKay to ask his question.
Mr. Perkins, a nice try. Yes, I don't usually sit on this committee, but it just so happens that my visa is due today. And the money has been moved out of my bank account, but it's not been moved to credit my Visa card. And I dare say, because I've watched this happen a few times, is that the money kind of sits somewhere for about 24 or 48 hours and then ultimately gets credit. And it used to be that they would ding me with interest until I yelled and screamed and jumped up and down, and they stopped doing it. But somehow or another, and here's my scenario, is if I were at my credit limit, I would not be able to conduct a transaction. And that would be a detriment to me, even though I'd paid off my credit card. At least the money had been taken out of my bank account. So to Visa and to the bank, I got a feeling that somebody's making money out of this, and it's not me. And I don't quite understand the interchange or exchange between the bank and Visa and how that affects a consumer like me, but somehow or another, the money's out of there. So the bank still has the money, but Visa doesn't have the money. So the bank's got my money for free or overnight, or sometimes it's a lot longer than overnight. And I don't get any compensation for that. And it seems to me that that's true of literally hundreds, well, more, millions of transactions. So I'd be curious as to, in the 25 seconds you've got left, how you explain that to consumers who are, like me, regularly and routinely pay off their account on time.
But in 20 seconds or less, apparently. Two things. One, as you rightly pointed out, you get credit for payment on the day you paid it, irrespective of how long it takes to go between your bank and the bank of card issuance. With respect to the mechanics of actually expediting that, that is very much that's what we're working towards with the real-time rail and real-time payments movement, so that that payment can move literally in seconds from one institution to another institution.
What I don't understand is why that doesn't now move in seconds, because if I pay a transaction with my grocery store with a debit card, it's like that. Why is it, and because it's held up money, who is it that's making money on this interchange?
I can't speak to interchange, but I can tell you right now, the first part that you're talking about is what you're observing is authorization. There's real-time authorization, but the money moves between institutions over the payment system, and that tends to happen. Unfortunately, right now, overnight, we are working to resolve that through the real-time rail project with Payments Canada. I'm sure you've probably heard something about that, but if not, certainly there's more that can be discussed.
Okay, I'll let it go there.